Okay, this one is about chastity, purity, 貞潔、純潔、たくさん言うことがありますし、個人的に相談すればもっといろいろ言うと思うんですけども、とりあえず、so some general things about purity. Starting with, well, how to frame it. I mean, it's not, shouldn't be seen as a negative thing. We have been asked to, and we want to love God with our whole heart, mind, and soul. Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Now that means, okay, go to heaven and see him in the beatific vision, but it also means that we can see the world around us and people, with the more in the way that God sees them. So our whole heart, mind, and soul means we want to give everything to God. Our emotions, our thoughts, our imagination, our memory, everything for love. And well, we can see plenty of cases where that doesn't happen and people are not happy, and they're that much less human. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I think it's obvious. So everything for God, that includes our carnal desires, and St. Paul says, "Didn't you know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit and that you were bought at a great price? Give glory to God and carry him in your bodies." あなたたちの体はそのうちにある神から受けた聖霊の聖女であって、自分のものではないと知らないのか。誠にあなたたちは高価で買われたものである。だからその体をもって神に声を着せよう。はい。結局愛のためですね。なんで、ネガティブな戦い、これに対してノー、あれに対してノー、じゃなくて、愛する人になりたい。で、いろんな誘惑受けてるし、戦うことが必要ですね。罪人ですし、ですけども、何に向かって戦っているか、愛ですね。知識の香りから、締結は単なる抑制ではなく、愛する者同士の積極的な態度であり、若々しい愛を保つための徳なのです。Saint Josemaria. Okay, the truth is, we do not know for sure how old Saint Joseph was when he married the Virgin Mary. And to get across the idea that that the two lived perfect chastity, meaning in this case that they had no sexual relations. That's kind of hard to imagine for a lot of people, and unless Saint Joseph's an old man, that's the way they painted him off, and Saint Josemaria just did not agree with that at all. That we can, and many people do, live purity at a very young age. And he preferred pictures of Saint Joseph that were, in his prime. 可能ですね。可能です。ですから、聖ホセマリアは、若々しい、その聖ヨセフの像が好きだったんです。もちろん、戦いが必要ですが、じゃあそれについてどうしたらもっと、清い心を持って生活できるか。一つ大事なのは、その弱さを認めること。謙遜。そして、話すことも大事です。何か失敗すれば、もう、国会する。その霊的指導者に、それをそのまま話す。So, a few ideas then for how we can become more pure of heart. And one is, well, to be honest with ourselves, be humble, to admit that, yes, we do carry this stain of sin, and if we fail, go to confession, and get that grace of God. Talk to our spiritual director. Tell that person straight, what happened, what's on your mind, and be very sincere. That's the largest part of the battle, perhaps. Okay. React quickly. Don't dialogue with it. It'll just get more and more glued to your imagination, and just no. You're online, you click something, you say, oops, get off the page. Something stuck on your mind, turn it off. And again, it's not just a negative struggle. Okay, try to replace it with something else. 早く反応すること。もうクリックしてしまった場合は、はい、もうそれを閉める。本を読んでて、YouTube 見てて、いやらしいものが出てきたら、もう、ページめくる。その本を閉じる。別のものを見る。それを楽しんだりすると、ますます、引っかかってしまうんですね。次の機会になるのは、そうです。インターネット、本や雑誌や、映画とか、で、それを閉じる。友達、前、大阪の、友人がいたんですけども、あれはまだ学生で、友達がたくさんいた。で、時々やっぱり 男子だけの集まりで女の話になる。で、まあ、ガールフレンドの話で、まあ、そんなにいやらしい話でない場合もあり得るけども、やっぱりちょっとそっちの方に走ることがある。彼は、そういう時に、えーっと、いつも集まってた友達のグループのほとんどは阪神ファンだったんです。で、またその話かと思ったら、急に、いやもう、見え見えだったんですけども、ゆうべの阪神の試合見ましたか？3回の裏の、あのヒットはすごかったじゃないですかとか。で、友達が分かりながらも引っかかるんです。彼はもうその辺は上手だったんですけども。で、そのやり方を別にみんなに進めてるわけじゃないんだけども、えーっと、まあ上手だった、あの人。I had a friend from Osaka who, I was a college student, the guys that get together, sometimes they, start talking about girls or something like that. And well, what if he thought that the conversation was just going a little too far in the wrong direction, he would just suddenly and very obvious. It was obvious what he was doing, but most of the guys in that group were Hanshin Tigers fans, and he would just start talking about last night's game, and it worked every time. They knew why he was doing this, but they would fall in the trap. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should use his methods, but it was actually kind of amusing, and he was good at it. But sometimes, it can happen. You might get ridiculed for it. I know of another man who, now this was, okay, he was already, in his 30s, company worker, and, they went out for drinks after work, and then they started heading toward a second place. He could see from the door that this was not the kind of place that he would want to walk in, and and he said, he's this just isn't my kind of place. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm going home. And he really felt like, well, he felt embarrassed. Well, he went home. Next day at work, one of the other men in that group came to him and said, I wish I had done what you did, I just didn't have the guts. So, yeah, but and that guy was married, and so were some of his companions, and there's another, I used to give some English classes at a company. This was after the working day had finished, and so after the English class, we'd walk to the station together, or even stop and have something to eat or drink afterwards, and I'd get to know them a little bit. That group of guys, men, it was like there were only two things you could talk about. One was sports, fine, but not all the time, and the other is women. And it's like, and as I say, a lot of these men were married, and I know that their home life was a wreck, and that it was affecting their kids, you know. So that's what we're, and then you feel embarrassed to say that you're trying to live a chaste life. Well, what's there to be embarrassed about, you know? もう一つのケースは、これはもう社会人だったんですけども、この人は結婚してたし、仲間ものほとんどもそうだったんですけども、仕事が終わってからちょっと飲みに行って、そして二次会して、で、二つ目のところはもう入り口から、いやもうちょっと私はここに入りたくないと思ったんですね。恥ずかしかったけども、ちょっとここはもう遠慮しますって家に帰ったんです。恥ずかしかったけども、次の日、その仲間の一人が、いや、私もそうすべきだったっていう話をしたんですね。また別のところで私はもう、英語を教えてたんですけど、会社まで行って、で、終わってから、何回も、一緒に話をしたから、割合知ってる人だったんですけど、とにかく、会話のテーマは二つに決まってた。スポーツか、女か。でも、それ以外のことはもう普通に話ができない。ちょっと。で、それで、締結を守ることは恥ずかしいんですけど、いや、もう逆に、そっちの方が恥ずかしいんじゃない？人間として、まとまない家族もなくて、はい、ポルノ。こういう話をしたくないんだけども、やっぱり、中毒性ありますし、それで見る目が変わるんです。相手を人じゃなくて物として、私が楽しむものとしてしか見えなくなる。You know? Pornography is, people say, well, okay, but it doesn't affect anybody else. It does. It does because it changes the way you see women. You start seeing them as objects for my pleasure, my gratification, not as persons, and we can't let that happen, Now, there is purity for chastity for married people, for singles, for celibates, for married people. Well, okay, I'll see. Okay. For married people, okay, marital morality is another long topic which I won't go into in detail on this video. Yes, generosity, fidelity. Let me read though. Again, there's so many things that could be brought up and maybe should be brought up. I just have to limit myself in this video. And if people want to contact me and continue the conversation, fine. Here, I'll just read. This is 2352 in the Catechism. The deliberate use of the sexual faculty for whatever purpose outside of marriage is essentially contrary to its purpose. For here, sexual pleasure is sought outside of the sexual relationship, which is demanded by the moral order, and in which the total meaning of mutual self-giving and human procreation in the context of true love is achieved. All right, you could talk an hour about that, but it says anything, masturbation, and so as I said at the beginning, if there's anything there, quickly go to confession, and if it's become a habit, we'll work on it, get some advice. 日本語で読みますが、カテキズムの、235に、読めるかな。その機会が何であれ、正当な夫婦関係以外で性機能の意図的行使は、その機能の究極的目的に本質的に反します。その場合、性の快楽は道徳的秩序によって要求される性的関係、すなわち誠の愛の連関において、相互需要と人間品色の従前な意味を実現する関係以外に求められてます。mutual self-giving。私のすべてをあの人に、その人のすべてを私に。OK。言いかけたけども、結婚している二人の締結もある。つまり、その目的のために性行為をする。と、その子供を育てること。So, purity for married people is, I'm for her and nobody else, and using sex for that purpose alone, and being generous in raising these children. Now that can get you into, sometimes you do have to be firm. Fine. All my life I've been an English teacher. I studied linguistics in college. Okay, I'm a celibate. In college, I'd say about 70% of my classmates were young women. Throughout my career, over half of my students have been girls or women. And I deal with these people, of course. I avoid having intimacy with any of them. With my students, I talk to them in the classroom. The doors, the doors and windows are, I mean, it's a semi-public place. There are others around, or anybody could walk in at any moment, and things like that. I know men who have been put into situations where they are one-on-one with a woman, and the company or the government or their employer says no, it has to be this way, and and they were married, or made other commitments, and they looked for another job. I have known people that did that. えーから、そう、親しくなる前に、ブレーキをかける必要がありますから、まあ、えー職場で、えーっと、異性と関係を当然しますが、まあまあ、その、職、職業だけの関係にしておくために、時としては戦いが必要です。うーん、えーっと、So there's a purity for married people. There's a purity for singles. Um, okay. As I said, I'm a celibate. I have been since my student days. All right. A lot of people, all right. Most students are still single. Most of them are planning to get married someday. Fine. Then go dating. All right, but there's dating and there's dating, right? Keep it clean. Um, okay, going steady and seeing this person with such frequency that it's really hard to apply the brakes. Well, that's not a good idea. Um, okay, just remember, I want to respect this person. I mean, this person might become the mother of my children. What kind of a woman do I want her to be? You know, um, okay. 学生はまだ結婚してない人は当然異性と関係しますし、デートもするし、まあ、その辺にも、おかしくならないようにちょっと注意すべきです。じゃあ、戦うところをいくつか述べたんですけども、神の助けが必要です。から、一番最初に言った許しの遺跡、国会とか、霊的指導とか、それも大事ですし、祈りも大事ですし、あとは、犠牲の精神、つまり、食事関係であれば自分に対してノーと言えない人は他のところにもちょっと、ブレーキかけることも難しいでしょう。食事でも何でも。So a spirit of mortification, if you can't say no to yourself, when you walk past the refrigerator, how are you going to say no to yourself in other areas? Okay. So, that can help. But prayer, pray to the Virgin Mary. I was taught when I was just a kid, my mother taught us to say 3 Hail Marys every night, asking for purity. She taught me that before I knew what purity was, but it's good advice and I still follow it. I think a lot of members of, I think members of Opus Dei generally do that. And of course, there are many other prayers. Any prayer book will have prayers that, prayers specifically on this. Okay. So, 祈りも一番大事でしょうし、 うーん、マリア様に祈ることもよく勧められてます。So I will finish here for this time and mm, try to get in one more next week.